And I'm going to introduce our guest speaker for today. Our guest speaker for today is, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Pastor Ralph Miley. He's president of the nonprofit Christian Comic Art Society. And I'm going to give you a little bit of personal history. Pastor Miley was a teacher for the Los Angeles Unified School District for 33 years, teaching math and art in the middle school. And he was a senior pastor at La Mirada Foursquare Church for 10 years, an assistant pastor for 5 years before that, and then 10 years at another church. Today he will be speaking to us about the nonprofit Christian Comic Art Society, and then he will be also talking about, in the end, sharing a little bit about the longest Christian. You've heard of San Diego Comic-Con?
Yes. Yeah.
There is a Christian Comic-Con, and it's a Christian themed family convention, and he will be talking a little bit about that as well, and he will be happy to answer any questions about that. So without further ado, Pastor Miley, would you please come speak to us? And you can use this or not, it's up to you.
You've got a big voice.
I said, do you need a topic to talk? He says, I'm a pastor, I can talk forever.
Thank you so much. It is such a privilege to be able to be here and share about what we do at the Christian Comics Art Society. But in order to do that, I got to get a little bit of history about me. I was introduced to comics in 1964 by my older brother, and I'm afraid I've been addicted ever since. And after that, it was about in 1976 that I received Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And it wasn't because I wasn't in church, because I was considered a drug baby. In other words, my mother drugged me to Sunday school, and she drugged me to Bible study. But it did not, let's just say, take hold. But what happened was, in 1976, I was introduced to what was called chick tracts. One of the names were Holy Joe and This Was Your Life. They were comic books. They were just throughout the whole world. And it was when I read those tracts that I really came into a knowledge of what it meant to be a Christian. It wasn't about going to church, but it's about a personal relationship with the Father through Jesus Christ. And it was there where I made that profession of faith in 76. But during that journey, I was trying to reconcile comic books and church. Because where I was going, it just did not mix. I went to Zion Baptist Church, and then I went to West Adams Foursquare Church. And though I had family there, and it was just an amazing time of growth for me spiritually, I was still wrestling with this whole concept of comic books and faith. And at one point, I even got rid of some of my comic books. And when I asked the Lord, if this is of you, please take it away from me. But I still had this desire, this passion for comic books. So it wasn't until maybe 1984 that I was introduced to the Christian Comic Art Society, which was founded by Don Ensign. And he taught me that you can love Jesus. And I didn't have to forego my enjoyment of comic books. Because for a while, the church I was the only one. And that's what I thought, that I'm the only one who likes comic books, but also loves the Lord. There was nobody to talk. And so what he did, he's introduced me to that community of of people who are believers, but also enjoy comic books, because I believe that we were created for community. Because the body of Christ, this is what Christ said, we are a body. And so we as individuals are created for that community. And so finally I found a community where I could share this geekiness that I had, along with people who love the Lord. But then and I started going to Comic-Con, which is like the mecca of comic book conventions, the largest comic book convention in the United States. I started going in about 1985. But it was then, 1997, that the Christian Comics Art Society, we wanted to have a booth, a table at Comic-Con. And the reason for that is to shine the light of Christ. And so at this table we had tracts, and we had Bibles, and we gave away Bibles to people who would ask. And we would sell comic books and graphic novels by people who were Christians. And because we were part of that community of comic book of people, they gravitated toward us. And they began to recognize us. And since 1997, we've been there for 28 years as the Christian Comics Art Society. And the Lord has just garnered so much favor. And we also have a Sunday service at Comic-Con. And we've had that for 27 years. And what you come away with is you come away with these amazing stories of God's favor, that he said, this is where I've called you to be. This is where I have you. And like for us, this is our territory. And what we're doing, we are really staking claim to shine the light of Christ. Not only that, but able to talk to people. And what we found, and one of the scriptures that I enjoy, one of the scriptures, like one of my foundation scriptures, is Ephesians 2:10. And this is out of the Amplified Bible. And it says, we are his workmanship, his own masterwork, a work of art, created in Christ Jesus, born from above, spiritually transformed, renewed, and ready to be used for good works, which God prepared for us beforehand, taking paths which he said that we should walk in them. So this journey that I think we are all on, it has its mountain peaks and it definitely has its valleys. But in it all, God is working through us, even though we are wondering, especially when you're going through difficult times. And I know there's no drama like family drama. No, and there's no drama when you have children and grandchildren. And yet all of that is God molding us and shaping us toward this path that he has for each and every one of us. That this is where I have you. And the things that have happened in your life that I have caused so that I can make you the man or woman that I've called you to be. Even in the valley situations, even in the drama, even in the thing where we're wondering, where is God? He is there, and he's using those things to what? Shape us and mold us into what he has for us, whether it be as part of a family or whether it be in a church. And that's the one thing that I've come to realize, that with all my flaws and with all my, let's just say, issues, God is still forming me and working in me. And I'm just so thankful for that. And he's worked in me for years. I've been married for 41 years, and my wife has tolerated me for about 41 years with all the comic book stuff. And so she says, all right then, honey. She'll say, go to Comic-Con. I get to have the house to myself. And I get to rest now, and all my daughters and their husbands go with me because they're geeks too. I raised them right. But what happens is that he's molding us and shaping us for whatever community that he is guiding us toward. And for us, the comic book community, and it is definitely a culture. You hear these terms, like superheroes and supervillains and manga and anime and mutants and RPG, which are exclusive language to that community. And in order to speak to that community, you have to know the culture and you have to know the language. And when you know that, then you make that connection. And no matter where we are, they're looking, because we have on our banner the Christian Comic Arts Society. There is no doubt as to what we stand for. We're not shy about it. And one of the other scriptures in which I look at is 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 2 and 3. And this is out of the New International Version. It says, "You yourselves are our letter, written on our hearts, known and read by everyone. You show that you are a letter from Christ in the result of our ministry, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not of tablets of stone, but tablets on the heart." And what I found out is that when we're at Comic-Con and we say that we're Christians, they're looking at us. They're trying to say, all right then, you say that you're Christians, but are your actions going to reflect what you claim to be? And you get that. I used to get that at work. Whenever they always ask you, well, that's not very Christian of you. Why? It's because they're looking. Our family is looking. Our neighbors are looking. They're looking to see, are we going to reflect what we profess? And one of the things that was amazing for me is that because we've been there for 28 years, we've had this neighbor for about 10 years. And he was kind of an agnostic, but we were his neighbors. And we would talk to him, and we were able to make that connection with him because he liked comic books. And we would talk about it every time we would see them. So last year, he came up to me and he said, now this is after 9 years, he said, "You guys have finally won me over." And I said, he said, "I've been watching you all these years, and you exemplify the Christians that I read about in the Bible." So that lets us know that people are watching us. They're looking at our lives, and they're looking to see, is what you profess lining up with how you live? And that's how they do it. Even our children do it, both positively and negatively. All right, and they pick up those habits. Not only are my children are geeks, but sometimes they picked up my stubbornness. Just to let you know that they're watching. In our marriage, I'm real transparent when it comes to things like that. Let's just say I had a temper issue, and I was mad. I was angry with my wife, because she said I talked on the phone too long. So I took the phone. I said, "Okay, then you think I talked to the phone too long?" And I took the phone and I threw it against the wall. I guess I won't have that problem again. Well, my son was watching me, and my wife was giving him a bath, and he took his little block and he threw it against the wall. And my wife said, "Why did you do that?" "Well, Daddy did it too." So and I said, "I will never do that again." It just broke that habit. Because people are watching. Our lives are that light that shines. And that is what we are at the Christian Comic Art Society at Comic-Con, is that light, so that when people see us, they see the light of Christ. And then they ask questions. I can't tell you how many questions people have asked me. And because I'm a pastor, I like to talk. And they'll ask me these questions, and God just sovereignly gives me these answers, and we engage in conversation. But what happens is they come away with insight into our Christian faith that they've never known, because they may not have Christian friends, or the only Christians that they know are the ones that are protesting outside the hall. But once you start engaging in conversation, and once you start engaging in talking to them, God opens up so many doors. I'll tell you one other story. We have what was called the Spiritual Themes and Comics panel, right? And we had only Christians on there. And we had this woman who was there, and she was Wiccan. She practiced witchcraft. And she said, "Well, would you want to have a different perspective? Because I saw spiritual themes, and all I saw was Christians. Would you be interested in having me on the panel?" I said, "Sure." And we began to talk. And what was amazing, after our panel, I began to ask the two people who were part of that, how did you come to believe in what you believe? And they shared with me. But then they asked me, how did you come to believe what you believe? And there it was, that open door to share Jesus. And that is what they're looking at. That's what they're looking to connect. Because I believe all of us are trying to make that connection. There's some people are connecting in the wrong way. But we can show them the right way to connect with the creator of the universe, and that is through Jesus Christ. And that is why he has us there. And that is why it is such a rewarding experience. So in 2014, we decided that we would have the Alpha Omega Con. And that is a comic book convention that is Christian themed, family friendly. And we've been having it for about 10 years. It is the first and the longest running Christian themed, family friendly comic book convention in the US. Thank you very much. But again, it is by his grace. And what it is, it's a place where Christian geeks find out that they're not the only one. In other words, there are Christians that not only share their faith in Christ, but they share their love for comic books and all things geeky. And it is a community, a Christian community that understands the terms of like anime and manga and mutants and RPG. And they're able to share their passion for that, but also within the context of their Christian faith. And it is such an amazing time where last year we had over 500 attendees, and all the kids came dressed up in superheroes, and we have a cosplay contest, and they all come dressed up. But it is at a church. We open up our convention in prayer. We have panels about how to grow spiritually and how do we reach the younger generation who are into this type of pop culture. They're into anime and they're into manga. And how do we as believers reach out to them? Because they're going to be involved in it. But how do we bring them back? And letting them know that there are Christians who also enjoy it. Christians who also, that they can say, oh, you mean there's a Christian version of this? There's a Christian superhero. There's a book made about the Bible, and it just opens up so many doors. And not only for us who are Christian geeks, but also people who think, all right, then how do they reconcile the two? And then they see this whole church filled with creators who are believers, but also enjoy the pop culture. And they began to see, oh, there is that connection. There is that way to reach them. And that is, I recognize it's not by me. It's not by us. It is by his grace and his grace alone. Because we recognize that the reason that we wake up every morning is because of him. It's that song, it is his life that gives us purpose. And every day that he gives us is a day of purpose. And that is what I am so thankful for. So this year marks like the 10th year of the Alpha Omega Con. And as long as the Lord allows us, we're going to continue to try to shine that light of Christ, not only in Comic-Con and the other various secular conventions, but also among ourselves to say, yes, there is a place, there is a community where you can love Christ and enjoy that passion, because part of it is that molding and shaping. And my wife, she's only been to one Comic-Con in 41 years, and that was the last Comic-Con she went to. She says, I'm good. I don't need to go anymore. You go, take our children. I'm fine. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm just thankful that he allows me to do that. And I'm thankful for this opportunity that you've allowed me to share. And again, the Christian Comics Arts, the Alpha Omega Con is going to be September 20th, 2025, and it's going to be at the Light and Life Christian Fellowship in Long Beach, on Downey Avenue in Long Beach. So I have cards here, and it's at the church. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes.
What kind of comics do the people read? Do you make up your own comics, or do you just read all the comics that are out there?
I don't read all the comics.
No, but-
It's kind of like you have to be discerning. For me as a Christian, I have to be discerning about the things that I read.
Okay.
And I happen to be a superhero geek. You know, I'm a superhero.
Yeah.
And I enjoy superhero comic books. But then I also recognize that there are some that I said, I need to stay away from that. So in anything, I think we have to be discerning what we read. And so with us, I just enjoy I enjoy the superhero stuff, and I love the superhero stuff.
Do you watch the movies?
Some of them.
Okay.
Some of them. You know, they had this high point and they're kind of like, and then there are some I truly will not watch because of the content. But that's for me, that's why we have to discern. So there's just some I just won't watch because of the content that they have. But then there are some that, whoa, I just love it and I enjoy it and I'm able to talk about it and talk with other people about it. Yes, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I always thought of comics as funny and laughing. And, you know, I don't think that even the funny papers are very funny anymore.
No, they're not.
And I feel that way about late night comics and stuff. They just aren't funny, they're mean.
Exactly.
And I just think we need to laugh more, but we need to laugh at ourselves and we need to laugh at things that are happening in the world because they're pretty sad.
I think what it is, in the comic book, there's so many different aspects, so many different genres. Like, for example, you have those comic books which are humorous, and they're lighthearted and they're amazing. I am a fan of The Far Side, so that's one of my all-time favorites, and it is hilarious. But then there's also the serious type, Prince Valiant and Flash Gordon, which are also comic strips that were in the newspapers. Then you have those comic strips, like there's this one publisher, David C. Cook. They published the Illustrated Bible back in the 70s. And they've been around since the 30s, and they would produce weekly newspapers where they had illustrated Bible stories. And now they have this one book called the Action Bible, and it's just a hot seller. And it's amazing because it just chronicles, just significant stories in the Bible, and not chronicles. We're not going to be going through chronicles in comic book form, all right? That would take forever. But again, it is a door. We had just this year, we had the Action Bible, which is a Bible, illustrated Bible by David C. Cook, which is a very reputable organization that, again, has produced Sunday school materials for decades, since the 40s. And they had this Action Bible, this illustrated Bible, and this guy came up to the table, he said, dude, you mean you could do comic books and the Bible? Yeah. No way. No way. Dude, I got to buy this. And he bought it. He said, I've never bought a Bible before in my life, but I will buy this. Why? Because it spoke to him. And so he never picked, his Bible was in his drawer, and he never bought a Bible, but he said, I'm going to buy this Bible because it's a comic book Bible. And it's very faithful to the Bible in its content, and it's been a top seller for over 20 years. Yes.
Can these Christian comics be bought at regular comic book stores?
No.
Or mainly like online? Or
Online, mostly online. The Christian Comics Art Society represents different publishers. And so the publishers, whether it be small, big publishers like David C. Cook or Thomas Nelson, they'll send their books to us so that we can sell at the conventions. And so because we represent different publishers, we're not a publishing house, but we do represent different publishers. So if they wanted to find out, to get the Action Bible, they could go online. Last year we had Thomas Nelson, and they donated, oh goodness, about 100 Bibles for us to give out at Comic-Con. Free, really nice Bibles. And people picked them up. They picked them up. We ran ran out of Bibles at a secular comic book convention because people were picking them up because they were free. And Thomas Nelson offered them for free. And they said, anytime you want Bibles, just call us and we'll send them to you so that you can give them out free to the people who want them. Yes.
And at your convention, do you have comic books of different levels for kids?
Yes, we do. This year, we fortunately had a great spectrum. Some for children who are like maybe 6 or 7 years old, some for preteens and teens, and some for adults. So we had a full spectrum of material for all types. We even had a book for girls that highlighted Naomi and Ruth and Abigail. So we tried to get as many of those as possible. Yes?
Yeah, one of the reasons why I like comic books, and I think most kids do, is they're colorful. And the colors are attractive. And even back in the days when I used to read Archie and Veronica and those kinds of things, they appealed to me because of the color. And then I was drawn in by that. There was Lulu, there was, all kinds of things. And so I think that when you have a comic book that has a lot of color to it, kids are attracted to that. And if you read the comic book to them, or whether they're reading it to themselves, they're drawn in and it's a perfect opportunity to then share the values that we want to push, like kindness, fairness, acceptance of everybody. And rules number 1, 2, and 3: be kind, be kind, be kind.
Exactly.
So I'm thinking that and I invited our preschool director here because I thought there was something that she might be interested in for some of her kids that can be read to them, and so I want to thank you for bringing that up, that we can do that kind of thing, because that's what I like about comic books.
One thing you will find
And I'm old.
I am too. One of the things that we have found out at the Alpha Omega Con, we'll have different publishers there, and so there will be a variety of books there. So there will be like the Action Bible. There will be books for younger kids there, because we'll have at least maybe over 40 exhibitors there. Many of them are Christian publishers who are publishing books on their own. One of the favorite books which we sold out of this year was the Book of Ruth, and it was a graphic novel, but it's set in the Depression era, and it had David, it had Boaz, and Ruth, and you have that, and people, we sold out of it, and it was amazing how we sold out of it. This year we couldn't keep books in. We sold out of Action Bible and the Bible Character Guide and all the things, the Christian material. People were just lapping it up. So again, that is why we're there. And here at the Alpha Omega Con, it's like invite your youth group, invite your children's group, because they're going to see a lot of geeky stuff. They're going to see people dressed up, but they're also going to see a lot of Christians who are there who just have this love for comic books and are producing books on their own. And again, there's going to be books for people that are for all ages.
Do you have panels also?
Oh yes, we're going to have panels, and some of the panels that we have, again, one of the panels, how do we reach those kids? In other words, how do we reach the kids who are involved in role-playing games, who are involved in manga, who are involved in anime, and its influence cannot be denied. And we have to make sure that we come up with strategies and how to bring our young people in. And when you're able to speak and they're able to be there, it's amazing how they will start coming to church. Every church that we've been at, the leaders there always say, every time you're there and you leave, people start coming to our church because we've had this convention there. so it's an opportunity and the church, the host church, they can put out their cards, we pray, and it draws people in because they've never heard something like that. But then people who are curious about it will come, and they end up coming to the church. So it's it is a unique evangelistic outreach. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm impressed you taught middle school.
Oh, yes.
That's a
33 years.
fascinating age to work with. But you said something about there were protesters outside that called themselves Christians. I was wondering what it was they were protesting, and
Well,
I would see them as a different group.
okay, there are two groups who are out there protesting. We call them, one is the yellow sign people. And all they do is they hold up these yellow signs and they have Bible verses. And when they read off the megaphone, they're just reading Bible verses, and they have books there. And they're just sharing. But because of the culture, people don't pick them up. They have boxes. And so I went out there and I said, can we take your box into Comic-Con and put it at a table? And lo and behold, I would take a box of their material, we would put it at our freebie table, in which we give out tracts and Bibles and all that, and they were gone like in that day because of they saw us, and they said we're not preaching to them, but we made it available to them, and they walk away with it. And so it's knowing the culture. But then there are the angry people who say, all right, then because you dress as Batman, you know you're going to hell, and that's how they come away with it. And we need to be careful about that, because I remember one lady was saying, when one of the protesters was saying, you're going to hell if you dress up as Batman. He says, you know what, as a geek, I was so rejected and made fun of. And she said, it's no surprise that God rejects me too. So that is why when she talks about kindness, it's the kindness of the Lord that leads people to repentance. And that's what we have to be. We have to be kind. We don't have to be affirming. We don't have to affirm, but we do have to be kind.
And the other question I had was, you have a website?
Yes, we do.
And is it possible to get materials if you don't go to a con to order through your website?
Our website, again, our organization just serves as a hub, in other words. And what we do is we can link you to publishers where to get those books. So if you go to our website, we don't have books for sale on the website because, again, we're representing different publishers.
Right, but you would have information what could be found at the publishers.
Yeah, exactly. So you could go to there and find that link and just say, I'm looking for the Action Bible. Or you can just Google the Action Bible and it'll pop up. And it'll automatically take you to that link where you can purchase books like that.
And your website address is?
Oh, all you gotta do is do Christian Comic Arts. If you do Christian Comics Arts
Go
Society.
back, we'll find you.
Yes, you sure will. Yes.
Last question. You are a curator too. Tell us about your comic book that you created.
Well, because I enjoy comics, I've been retired from teaching for about 10 years now. And I've been a pastor for about 10 years. And so when I took on the position of pastor of the church, I kind of like had free time. And I said, honey, do you mind if I draw comic books? She said, please, 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 but as long as you do the dishes before you. But the thing, what it is, so I enjoy creating comic books. I like the superhero genre. In other words, I like superheroes. That was my first introduction. And so I produced a comic book, and it's a series that I've been doing for about 5 years now since I've been retired. And saying that's just what I consider the sovereignty of God. That because for me, the most important thing is God. Second is family. And then third is Comic-Con. Now that's my priority. And because family was that priority, you just have to make sure that you provide for your family, and school teaching provided that for me. And in middle school, I was a dictator. I was a tyrant. Oh, you have to be in middle school. They have to line up, boys on one side and girls on the other side, and they have to say, "Good morning, Mr. Miley." They're not Miley or not Ralph. "Good morning, Mr. Miley," to come into my classroom. And you don't get to sit where you want to sit. I sit you where I want to sit you. And you don't leave when the bell rings. You leave when I tell you to. So
And they respected you.
well, I didn't give them a choice, but I was never mean to them.
But it is.
But yeah, but I was never mean. I loved my students, but I was so serious. They never saw me smile. Never saw me smile. That shaped me, and so I was always Mr. Miley. And even when students start coming back to teach there, they would call me Mr. Miley, and then when I smiled, they were just kind of going, "What? You actually smile?" Yes,
So the comic books that you create yourself,
yes.
do you sell those?
Yes, I sell those. I sell those online, and those are I look at for older teenagers and adults, because I deal with subjects like abuse, abandonment, justice. Those are the topics that I delve off into, and they're a little bit more mature. It's not that it's graphic. It's not that it's violent, or not that it's profanity, or none of that. I'm a four-square Pentecostal geek. I don't do that. But what it is, I do tackle difficult issues such as abuse, child abuse, or topics like abandonment within the superhero context. So, while it's suitable for like teenagers, older teenagers, and adults, it would not be suitable for young children who are 6 and 7.
What about foster kids who are moving out through the system and, not yet adults, but they've kind of aged out? Would it be appropriate for them?
Yes, it would be appropriate. Again, we're talking about older teenagers and young adults. So, books like that, because superhero, they may not enjoy superhero. That's why it's such a wide genre, because there are some who enjoy superheroes and some who don't. There are some who enjoy what's called anime and some who don't. So that's why we have a wide spectrum of exhibitors there, because there's going to be something to appeal to the young people who are into that.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Because I do work at the preschool, and I have 3-year-olds who they love Spider-Man.
Yes.
Because Spidey and Friends, but it's not really geared towards 2, 3-year-olds, but their parents let them watch it because it's a cartoon and it's fun and colorful. So on the playground, constantly they're wanting to play superheroes, but someone's always got to be the bad guy. So we're trying to teach them, like, be kind. You guys can all be superheroes. You guys can all work together, like something like that. So I'm interested in this Alpha Omega Con to kind of see what other kind of artists are out there. It's like to bring it into the preschool.
Oh, they would be
To
great.
introduce them to something else other than Spider-Man.
Exactly, and there's just a wide variety, because you have independent publishers there.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of things, a lot of books within the context of, let's just say, superheroes, or biblical, or fantasy, and a lot of the children are into that. When I was a middle school teacher, they were huge in what is called anime, which is Japanese animation, huge, and it continues to be a global phenomenon within the culture, especially for young people, and we need to be aware of that.
Awesome.
Any other questions? I'm a school teacher. All right, and this is one of my school teacher positions. Put that over the glasses. Yeah, homework. No.
Do the best.
So if you want any cards, I have those available to you. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.